The Evermore podcast is now sponsored by WFST Total Compliance. WFST provides fire safety requirements UK-wide to prepare you and your employees should the worst happen. Do what you do best and visit wfst.co.uk today. Enjoy the episode. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Monday night. It's not quite 10 o'clock. It's 9:30. It's a bit earlier than normal. We are trying a new time slot. But yes, Mark and I are back asking the same question we ask every single Monday night. What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. I've been sitting watching the TV, eating an apple because I had the bravery. I thought I'd throw it at the bin that was 6 meters away, and I missed, and it hit. No, sorry, that's not me. That's Michael Owen. What a boring twat he is. What's going on with you, Mark?
I can't beat that. I can't be that at all. Oh, what a way to start. What a way. Yeah, Michael. Oh no, don't get started. But yeah, no, I'm good, man. That's a really weird way to start it. But yes, I'm all good, and you've thrown us again. So thanks for that.
I've thrown you like Michael throws apple cores at the wall because he has the bravery to do so. I mean, honest to God, he's not part of the show tonight, Michael. I'll just start to throw him in there as a bit of a rogue apple, so to speak. But what a boring man that guy is. Even when he's trying to tell a story about how good a player he was, and he was a fantastic player, he still bores the absolute cock off you. Thanks, Michael. Keep it going. So anyway, talking about what's on the show tonight. Yeah. Talking about what's on the show tonight here, we are going to relive a bit of a rough week for Newcastle, unfortunately. So hands over your eyes if you are a Newcastle fan, which most of you will be, and if you are some of the poor buggers who have been trying to get back today from London, God bless you all. We are going to give you a shout out in a minute. That was grim as toast for you guys this weekend, but we'll get stuck right into it. As we always say before we start any show, if you haven't subscribed already, we'd love you to come and join us. We are over 6,000 subs. Mark's been playing with his buttons. Look at that. What a lovely subscriber. That's really sounded wrong, that. What a lovely subscriber sign he's got there. We are over 6,000 subs. We got there for Christmas. Thank you so much, you wonderful people. So we really appreciate that. We are very much a baby in this whole world of YouTube podcasting, Newcastle fan media stuff. It's our second year birthday, Mark, isn't it? Mid-December next week, is it? Next Thursday?
On Friday this week, the 15th of December is our second birthday as Evermore. So
happy birthday to us. We're just toddlers still. How about that? But yeah, thank you so much.
Twos now.
Exact terrible twos. Hopefully not. Hopefully the content will still be good. But it's great to be up at 6,000 subs. So thank you so much, guys. Everybody smash that button. If you haven't already, you know what to do. Drop us a like too. Help the channel grow. And if you do want to be a member, there's an option there for you too. We are live tonight, as always. Jump in the comments. We've got a few in there already. Ty was wanting to get this shit started. We will be getting that shit started soon. Don't you worry, Ty. Andrew's got no fear. Who are the lads? He's saying Ian is in the house. Good to see you too, Ian. As is Simon. As is Guy. And Keith has dropped in to say hello as well. So let's kick this bad boy off then, Mark. So basically, I think the best way to really start this whole thing is to basically talk about the games this week. And I think the lads were running on empty, as we said there. Really, two tough games. One probably should have looked like it was more of a winnable game than maybe the other one, but just two really tired performances from the lads and some of the big players too, mate.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the Everton game was a strange performance. It's just flat, and Everton have hit that crest now that they're on the up, and I think Dyche has got them together, and I think Newcastle just
galvanised them, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's turned that point deduction into something that's motivated them, isn't he? You can see that. Good management, to be fair to Dyche. You've got to give him
that. It's. I mean, how many times do you see this with football teams and sports teams in general? Just the us against the world sort of mentality, and it works more often than not. And Everton, yeah, you're right. Totally galvanised. I think Newcastle struggling with fitness, struggling with available players. and just the wrong time to play them, really. And then that runs over into Sunday, up against a side that have got a few players back that are hungry to get themselves back to winning ways at the top of the league in Spurs. And it was one of those games that was, I think the last couple really have almost been waiting to happen with the way that things have sort of gone recently. Been some good wins, some tight wins, but it felt almost inevitable that something like this would just happen with the number of players that are missing. And I'm not a huge one for the players that are absolutely shattered. Yes, I understand that they are, but they're professional footballers. This is their job. But the fact that there is a lack of ability to make significant changes to the team, both pre and during the game, is a huge issue.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I'm a lot calmer than I was post-match on Sunday. I was pretty pissed off with that whole thing. It was more the manner of the defeat, I think, to be honest. But I think just look at Ian's comment coming straight in there. But is Isak injured or not interested? So frustrating. I think he's knackered, Ian. I think he's carrying a knock. I think we've rushed him back too quick because we don't have a centre forward. That's something we need to address in January. But this is part of the issue, I think. You look at the two games that have been and gone. And obviously, we're going to talk about Wednesday in a minute. Huge football game for Newcastle United season, and the future in terms of what we can do in transfer windows and everything else with the FFP situation. But you look at the two games, and you've got, for example, you've got Everton there on paper. You're thinking, Newcastle should really get a result there. But as we say, Everton are galvanised. Dyche has got them whipped up. They were actually playing quite well before they lost the deduction. They were sitting in 14th, and then that's probably just given them a little bit more motivation. And I think he's done a great job there. You've got players who are all right players, the steady players. But he's got them playing above themselves, like Rafa did for us, like Eddie Howe's done for us, and that's the reason that they probably went at us. But you can see, I think I said this on post-match, and listen, before I say anything, it's okay to criticise the players after a bad performance. It's okay to criticise the manager for perhaps some of his in-game decisions. That's absolutely fine. You can still support Newcastle United and love Eddie and the lads, but say your piece. I've seen some outlandish shit on social media. People getting attacked for just voicing an opinion. Big shout out to Toon Pauls, who actually tweeted something about it saying exactly that, and then said he can't understand how people just take a defeat as easy and move on. As football fans, we're so invested in our club that we do get annoyed and rattled. 24 hours goes by, you see things a bit more clearer, and you calm down a little bit, and you go, all right, fair enough. Injuries, it's not. But when you look at those two games in isolation, Kieran Trippier is a good way to start, Mark, I think, because this guy's a phenomenal footballer, but he has played some level of football for a 33-year-old lad between Newcastle United and England this season. He's barely had a rest. And I just think, for me, his body is shouting at him, saying, you need to rest Kieran, because he's making mistakes that he does not make as a player. He's too good of a player to make those mistakes, but he's making silly mistakes. For me, the Everton game, he made not one, but two bad mistakes. We've conceded, 7 goals in 2 games now, and Kieran Trippier's been at fault for probably 4 of them. And after Thursday, it's okay for you to ask the question, why didn't Eddie Howe take him out of the team? What was your take on the whole Trippier situation? We'll come on to Wednesday in a minute, but does Trippier need to be taken out of the team? Yeah, I know he's suspended for Fulham, but, should he be taken out before that? Should he be taken out for Spurs?
I mean, I said during the week, and I actually can't remember who I said it to, but I wondered whether there would just be a case of, look, Wednesday night is massive in terms of the ability to stay in the Champions League. You've got the likes of Hall and Dummett and Murphy and Kraft and Ritchie on the bench. Now, look, they're not the suitable replacements really for the players that they'd be coming in for, but they can do a job as a one-off. And I guess it almost feels like you sort of throw in the game and look, they'll come in and they'll do their best. But I just think there's probably, you go past Sunday and you go, that there's bigger fish to fry this week. And
so could he have rotated? Could he and should he have rotated?
Well, there's that question mark across the last few games to go. Even Everton, you go, well, look, you've kind of gone with the same players day in, day and week look, is it the last 5 that have been completely unchanged? There had to be something. Trippier looked done on against Everton on Thursday. I mean, those 2 minutes, and he'll want to put that right, and he'll not want to come out the side. And he's one of the best professionals out there, and he's going to want to put that right, but he needs a rest. And he's played an awful lot of football the last season and a half, and since his injury when he first signed. So he's done a ton of work, and he gets up and down the field so much. He puts in more miles, I think, than anybody else, because he runs that line constantly. And I did wonder why Trippier's legs weren't saved for Wednesday. Look, I'm not Eddie Howe. I'm never going to be in that position. But I did wonder why, you move Livramento to right back, you bring in Hall at left back, and you give Trippier a rest while you can. But then I also go into the in-game management as well, and it took till you were 3-0 down to make a substitution in the game yesterday. You make 2 on 64 minutes with Longstaff and Wilson. 2 more 9 minutes later, and Emil Kraft doesn't come on until the 86th minute. And at that point, I'm sorry, but I think I text you, and I think you said in the post game, just make all 5. Just give play. The game's completely gone.
We would never get back into that with the greatest will in the world. We would never get back.
Not at all. There was no chance. I mean, the first 10 minutes of the second half, I can kind of see the point, because for that period, it looked like Newcastle could get back into it. They created a couple of opportunities. Didn't really look like getting a goal. The chances weren't sort of gilt edged, but they were creating opportunities, and then sucker punched 15 minutes in with the third goal. So I can kind of see the point. But I think at that point you go, right, half an hour, just save their legs. They're chasing shadows at times. And I mean, especially for Trippier in that game, because Son had his life at times. And Son was up for it. He was eager to get on the ball, to run, to move players around, and he was exceptional. And I just think to have made those 5 substitutions all at once at 60 minutes and gone, right, half an hour, get them out, give the other players just a chance to get some minutes in their legs as well on the field in competitive game, and go from there. The game's gone at that point. You're not throwing it, you're not washing your hands with it, but you're seeing the bigger picture and moving on to the next one.
Yeah, man, just some of the comments coming in there. I think actually Rafael Lau might be injured, Ian, which I hope to God that he is. We'll do the preview for the Milan game, probably get it out tomorrow maybe for you guys. But I think that Lau might be injured, which is a godsend for us, because, yeah, you're right, him up against Trippier, you'll have him on toes. But it's an interesting one, Mark. I mean, going back to Spurs, I think I was a bit more clearer ahead after the post-match because I was just a bit pissed off at the whole thing. And I think when you look at the two teams, and I said this to you, I think, as well, and I've said this to a couple of other people in the aftermath of the game, that Son is an elite player. He's at that elite level. He's been up there for such a number of years. He's a fantastic footballer. He's one of them players that would get into a lot of sides across Europe, across the world. Newcastle don't really have an elite player of that quality. We laud Isak and Bruno and people like that, and Botman, and they very well might be elite in the next 2 to 3 years, but they're not there yet. Whereas Son has been there consistently for years, and he was the difference maker, I think, certainly on the Sunday. Going back to the Everton game, because we kind of got 2 for 1 here, we were beaten by a team who had more heart and desire to win that game than we did. That's the reason why we got done. And I think the 2 mistakes just totally done us over in that game. And we didn't have anybody to grab the game by the balls and say, right, fuck it, let's get back into the game, because none of the players had that in them. They had no gas left in the tank. But the game on Sunday, I mean, it's a good job Spurs were missing a few of their big players, Maddison in particular, because that could have been a fucking cricket score if Maddison had been there, I think, as well, because the amount of space that Kulusevski was finding in the midfield, because Bruno and Joe had a poor game. I thought Joe better in the second half when they moved further up the park, but he lost the ball loads in midfield. They were totally out-strengthed, in terms of the midfield battle between Basuma and Sarr. I felt sorry for Miley, because if you actually go back and watch the game, I had to go back and watch the highlights. Miley, we've talked about how clever he is as a 17-year-old kid. Watch him. He moves back almost into covering it right back, because he can see Trippier's getting done, and because Miggy's not helping him, Miley drops back in so much to that right back position just in front of Trippier. It is almost a deep lying midfielder, but to the right hand side, because he sees that Trippier's getting done and he's trying his best to double up on Son and it was the fullback, the what's he called, Destiny and Ndongo, who was brilliant, and Doggy, who's a great player. He was too quick, too strong for Miggy, for Trippier, and for Miley. So all three of them couldn't deal with it. And I do feel a bit sorry for Louis, because I think he just, having that mentality as a 17-year-old kid is incredible, but he's not got the in-game experience to deal with that, because he's still young. He needs his midfield colleagues to help him out when he's getting pushed around the park. And I think Bruno and Joe went missing. They don't get a lot of criticism, De Bruno and Joe, but I think they were both poor in that game, mate. I don't know what you thought in the Spurs game. I didn't see much from either one, really. Joe maybe in the second half, but I thought Bruno had a poor game.
I didn't think Bruno was particularly bad. I thought Joe Linton had a really, really quiet game. Look, he gets his goal.
I think defensively he was a bit poor. He put a couple of good challenges, but I just don't feel that Bruno grabbed the game by the balls like he should do in a midfield battle against that team. I think he went missing a bit.
I think realistically, you're looking at what they were playing up against, and I think Newcastle really struggled with the fact that the likes of a Doggy were coming inside and almost bolstering that sort of midfield and even attacking midfield, because he was playing as, he's sort of like an inverted wing back, isn't he? But he was almost playing in a 10 role at times, and he gets into that centre foot position for the goal, which is just mad. But he's done that an awful lot this season, and you know what those fullbacks are going to do for Spurs when they're on, they're playing on form, and there was no answer to that. I think that Bruno sort of kept the ball relatively well. He did put in quite a few challenges. He won the bulk of his duels, I think, from what I can see of his stats. But he was quiet. He didn't, very much in the defensive third. There's nothing really too much fun. One thing for Newcastle's problem was they just couldn't keep the ball. And when it was going forward, there was very little help from the wide players. I thought Almiron was poor.
Miggy was dreadful. I thought one of the worst games I've seen him play in a long time.
I'm looking at the SofaScore ratings, and Miggy's got a 7.3, and I don't quite understand how, because I thought he was dreadful.
Was that the Paraguayan statistician that did that one for SofaScore?
It must have been. Look, the Kieran Trippier got a 6.6. The other defenders 6.2, 6.4, 6.3, which I can kind of understand, because I think they were rattled a little bit and looked jaded. And Lascelles smashed off the board, didn't he, and was limping around for a bit. But it's just, Joe and Bruno, yes, you're right. I think they do get little criticism at times, especially now. But if we go back a bit, Joe Linton was the only one that was getting any criticism at times when he was playing as a forward, and rightly so, I think. But he seems, and especially Bruno, seems at times to be able to avoid criticism from some, but he does go missing at times. He is a little bit lacking in certain games, but I think they just struggled because they were pretty much overrun in midfield. Up against, Spurs had Sarr back, who was excellent, and Basuma I thought was brilliant. And again, they just kept the ball away from them, played behind them, played in spaces where the Newcastle midfield weren't, and that really affected Newcastle's ability to be able to keep the ball. And it then became rushed. They were trying to get the ball to places where players just weren't normally, because they're being pulled all over the place. It's one of those you write off. It's an absolutely shocking, poor performance. These things happen. You move on, and you've got a big game Wednesday, and then back at it in the league, and you hope for a couple more players maybe back coming in. There were rumours going into the weekend that the likes of Barnes and stuff were not that far away from the squad. So there's positives there, especially with Longstaff back, who I just think does give you a little bit more defensive solidity as well in midfield.
Yeah, I mean, he did look short of match fitness when he come on. The first thing he did was lose a ball and fall over, to be fair to him. So it wasn't a great introduction. But yeah, it's good to have Sean and Wilson back. More about Wilson in a second. Simon's just saying, if you can level critique at how it is in-game management, waits too long, overcautious in situations where you have to be more decisive. I think we talked about this on post-match a bit, didn't we? That it's easy for us to forget that Howe's a young manager and he's still very much learning his trade. He's been in the game for a long time. Did a phenomenal job at Bournemouth, done an unbelievable job with us, and he's reinvented himself, and he's a better manager now than he was in his Bournemouth days. And I think you will learn from what's going on now. So the great season that he had last season, he's learned things from. This season's been a bit more difficult in patches. We're still in a really good position. We're 6th or 7th in the table. I know we're in the Carabao quarter final. We've still got a good chance of getting through the Champions League. More on that in a second. So he's still having a very good season as a Newcastle manager, but he will learn a lot, I think, from some of the mistakes, like in-game management this season. I think he'll maybe learn to make that decision and take that decision away from the players, Mark, as well. Because I think a lot of these players are telling them that no, I can go on, or yes, I'm fit to play, and they're so eager to play. Trippier's a great example. So eager to play, so eager to make up for the mistakes that against Everton. But I think maybe where Howe has to improve, if he's got anywhere to improve, is to say to someone like Trippier, listen, Trips, you're part of my plans. You're a great player, but you need a rest. And Tino's playing on Sunday against Spurs or whatever. And I think he'll get there, Eddie, won't he? I think in a short period of time. But just on Wilson, and we'll talk a bit more about Wednesday in a second. But I thought Wilson looked quite sharp when he come on. I thought he looked, for someone who's been out for as long as he has, he looked ready for it. He had that zip, he had that buzz, he was holding the ball well. That was a good sign because Isak was practically fucking invisible at one point. I was waiting for somebody to throw paint on the fucker so I could see where he was, because I wasn't sure what he was doing, Isak, to be honest with you. He just looked dead in his arse. And when you looked at him on the bench, he was gassing He was gassing Isak. He looked like he's just wrecked, and I just don't think he's fit, mate. So we need Wilson back like that, don't we? We need him sharp.
Yeah, I think I genuinely, Isak's been rushed back because there isn't another option. Wilson had said during the week, hadn't he, that he was doing everything he can to be back. And I think from a Newcastle perspective, massive that he's back in the squad, because it does give you the opportunity to play and rest one and only give him minutes where absolutely necessary. Isak was completely anonymous from much of the game. I mean, the almost the absolute sitter he sort of misses first half. Give Ben Davies some credit.
Ian being positive there on Wilson as always. Give him 2 months and he'll be knackered again.
Wait to see the glass half fully in there.
We would have signed a third striker by then, Ian, so we'll be all right. It won't matter if Wilson has to go and have a long spell on the treatment table, mate. But, sorry, Mark, go on. You were saying.
No, it's yeah. Look, it's. Well, I forgot where I was going now, and I'm trying to start again. Isak the sitter. I think Ben Davies gets a lot of credit for this.
That's a good tackle. That's a good tackle, to be fair. Miggy's chance is easier than Isak's, in my opinion. Miggy should bury
Miggy's is a poor finish, and look, I come back to Miggy, and it was one of the I was looking at some of the bits and pieces for some of them, and Miggy's frustrating. And I know we both said pre-season that you just can't see Almiron having the same season he had last season. He hit a purple patch and things were going well. He was exceptional at times. There were games last season though when he was completely anonymous as well. Yes, he works hard, but there's a level, and I think Newcastle are now at a level beyond where he is. He'd be a cracking squad player. But the frightening statistic that I sort of look at with Almiron is he's a wide player. He's got 11 assists in 187 games for Newcastle.
Dreadful. And that is, there's no hiding place from those kind of stats, is there really? People say stat schmats, but there's no hiding place on that.
If your job is to provide either goals or assists, or goals for yourself or provide assists for your strikers, he's not doing it. He's had one purple patch where he scored lots of goals last season, but outside of that, his most Premier League assists in the season is 2. And he's got 1 this season, so it's not good enough. And we've talked about Miggy until kind of we're blue in the face. And look, he's been great for what he puts into the side. But Newcastle have to move on from that. If they are going to progress, they are going to. There is that type of player you have to improve on. And Everton again, the weekend he has that chance. He really should score that. And does that change the game? Does that put a different complexion on because Newcastle then have something to hold on to? I don't know. We'll never know. But yeah, it's a chance that he should be taken.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this before about Miggy. I think there's even talk about Minter coming back on from loan in January because he looks so good in the Eredivisie. We've got the Saudi Arabian element there as well. I think Miggy Almiron is a great squad player for Newcastle, but we missed a trick not upgrading on him in the summer. He's not clinical enough. Your stats back it up there. He's not clinical enough in front of goal. He's not clinical enough in terms of his assists. Right on schedule. Keith's saying exactly what I'm saying. We have two 19-year-old white wingers. I think one of them definitely is well worth coming back in Minter, Keith. But I just think with Miggy, Miggy's this lovable character, always smiling, and he seems like a top lad. He really does. And he seems like a great character to have around the squad. And if you're a tired player on 75 minutes, he's the last guy you want to come off the bench because he's like the Energizer Bunny, running at you. He could win you a free kick, a penalty, he could pop up with a goal or whatever. But I think Miggy's future in Newcastle for me is an impact sub. It's not a starting player that you look to bank your chips on to say he's going to win us this game. And I think the sooner the club know that, decide that, and act on that decisively, the better that the starting 11 will be. I mean, Harvey Barnes is coming back. He's on the grass. I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the bench on Wednesday night, to be honest with you. Barnes. If Barnes can get back up to speed, get fit, and start playing, you could easily see Gordon flipping over to that right-hand side, Mark, couldn't you? And Barnes coming in that left. That's an easy fix, I think, for me, isn't it? When Miggy's formed him.
But more than anything, you get output from them, and we've got more output
goals,
from
assists.
We've seen far more output from Gordon already this season, playing right across that sort of front three. Barnes will give you goals from that left-hand side. He's not.
He showed it in pre-season, Mark. He was electric in pre-season.
Exactly. His assist numbers aren't spectacular, I don't think.
His goals are good though. His goal return is excellent.
He does score goals, but he does it consistently. We talked about that again pre-season when he signed, that he does get an awful lot of goals from that left-hand side. He has one really good season last season where he scores 13, but season before 6, couple of the season before that 9. He does get those double figures in assists. Last season was just the one assist. So, there is that, although he did get 3 overall across all competitions. So there's that, although he has got more assists previous seasons as well. So in terms of that, you will get more output out of him, but as he gets up to speed as well, with the way that Newcastle are playing, you started to see what he could do pre-season and against Villa, the first game of the season. And I just think those two and a striker, whoever that is, that's your front three really. You bring in maybe one of the young lads to provide backup for one side. You've got Willock, who will be due back, and I think that's a comment that was in as well. That's another big miss that Newcastle have.
We do miss him. His ability to get us up the park is incredible. When Willock runs, he runs with purpose. He runs. He gets into the box. He commits players. He can win fouls. He can create. Miggy sometimes just runs for running's sake. He runs that corner flag. He tucks back and looks for Trippier. There were so many times on Sunday, Miley made that run to go by him, and he didn't slip him in. I think he slipped him in maybe once. If he was looking, Miley put across the box, which was a decent ball. But he made that run, Miley, 3 or 4 times, and Miggy didn't read it because he's just a bit too headless. He just runs looking down at the grass, doesn't he?
He knows that he can't use the right foot.
He's got to cut back inside.
He's absolutely reluctant to even just, and we screamed it, just swing it, because even if it's an awful cross, once or twice, if he goes, he only has to hit one right once or twice, and suddenly defenders will start to question which way he's going to go. And if you've got a player that's predominantly one-footed but is willing to go on the other foot, and we see that from several wide players, where Grealish is a good example actually at City, where he does drive past players, and he's willing to go down the left-hand side and use his left foot, even though his left foot is nigh and useless at times. But he's willing to do it, and that puts question marks in the defender's head. Every defender in the league knows exactly what Almiron's going to do. 99.9% of the time, he's going to stop, turn back, and pass the ball backwards. Yeah. And you can defend easily against that, really.
It's easy. When you look at Tino Livramento against Man United, he put a few balls in his left foot. So, you know what I mean? He was trying it, but I just think Miggy lacks that ability. But listen, it was a bad day at the office for the lads. Yeah. You know, we are tired. We are shattered. We're getting some players back, which is good. Wednesday squad will be interesting, but we'll get stuck into Wednesday a little bit in a second. But it was a nightmare day for the lads. It's also a nightmare day for the fans. Horrendous news everybody saw when they woke up. That I think there was overhead power lines down at Peterborough. Something weird enough, I just come back from London myself. I got back on Friday, and I said to Mark, being the selfish twat that I am, thank God it didn't happen. I was away, but I felt really sorry for those fans. So a lot of fans couldn't get down because the trains were cancelled. Fans who got down couldn't get back up. You know, some fans, I think, they cancelled a train at 10 p.m. on Sunday night. They were supposed to get back to Newcastle. They were the one that it was £192 for a one-way ticket back to Newcastle this morning, market. I mean, two things at play here. One, the state of the rail companies at the minute in terms of this country is ridiculous. Anyone's ever been over in Europe and travelled on their transport, no bother at all, right? Absolute joke. The second one is, when are the clubs going to get to grips with this in terms of offering more transportation support for the fans? I know the Trust has said they've been trying to talk to the club about this, to deal with this, and I still don't have a contingency plan. So two things to unpack there, Mark. What's your take on both of them, mate?
Well, yeah, not to get too political, but the rail network's a shambles.
Yeah, they're crap.
I used to work for them. I used to work for
LME, previous life. Train boy, as you were previously known.
Train boy was my strange nickname. But yeah, look, I don't remember it being as bad. It must have been. I mean,
never as bad as that.
We had horrendous times with overhead lines and stuff, and the network's not. I think, as somebody put up with us once, it's not designed for the amount of traffic it has on it. It's too archaic. It's still a relic in terms of the way that it's designed and what, you know, how it works. I think they still think they're living in the 60s and 70s rather than in the modern age. And you're right. You go to most foreign countries and their rail systems work a whole lot better. I mean, Christ, go to Japan and see how theirs works and come
Jesus.
back.
But not even that far, Mark. I've been on trains in Holland and Germany, and they're much better than the ones here. I've not had any problems with them. Do you know what I mean?
But I think the problem, I think, and what I know, that the comments that we're getting banded around, a lot of fans. I mean, the direction from the train companies was don't travel. And I get that sentiment, because there's an awful lot of people trying to pile onto other trains to get to places. But then the contingency plans in terms of tickets. And this was one of the things that was mentioned really early on, is if you're not going to travel, can you pass that ticket on to somebody else? What is the contingency? Be able to say to somebody who lives in London? And there were so many messages from people in London going, well, I could go if my mate could send me the ticket, but they can't.
I'm not allowed
to use it. Yeah. You can't transfer it to them. So there's got to be a better way to kind of police the system and allow, when there is trouble like this, for fans to be able to go, look, there's a linked account for me. I can transfer it to. Do you know what I mean? So to be able to link the account, to be able to do something like that, to allow still full amount of fans, and fair play to Newcastle fans, because a shit ton of them still got there and still with it, and they were loud as always.
As they do. Listen, if they had to swim there from fucking Whitley Bay Beach, they would do, half of them. You know what I mean? And the Mighty Win saying that trains from Dusseldorf to Dortmund were late. I do remember that. I do remember seeing some of that. All trains from Dortmund to Dusseldorf cancelled. You had to get a taxi. I do remember seeing that. I don't know whether that was just because it was maybe the Champions League win. It was possibly that. I don't know. But certainly my experience of being over in Europe, and you know, it's not when big games are on, and for me, I never had a problem with it. We've got comment popping in there from Adam Pearson, AP himself, saying it was an absolute nightmare. He's probably just got back. Yeah, good for you, Adam. Adam puts in the miles, doesn't he, in terms of traveling, seeing Newcastle all around the country. So it's a real shame for you, mate. And I hope that your future journeys are safer than that, bud. But Newcastle United have got one of the most loyalist traveling fan base that there is. And I just don't know whether the club could engage a bit more. Maybe put on some more coaches. I don't know. I don't know what the best thing is to do here, in terms of trying to plan for contingency, because, I mean, there's a shitload of clubs in London, for us to get to. When I went to London, actually, I had to get from London to Bexley Heath on outside, which was on the Thames link, and there was no trains because of the strikes. So I had to get an Uber from London Bridge to my hotel. I was stuck in traffic for an hour and a half. It took me 3 hours on the train to get from Newcastle to King's Cross. I was in a cab effectively for an hour and a half, which cost 38 quid, which wasn't too bad in the end. But if I was going to a game, I would have been late and I possibly would have missed a kickoff. Do you know what I mean? So there is major issues, not just in our country, in Europe as well, I think, by the looks of it, from some of the guys are saying. But there surely has to be something else that the clubs can do. Reach out to the trusts and our fans, and just try and figure out a better way to resolve this contingency, mate.
Yeah, I always remember there being much better club transport. Yeah, you talk about, and loads of clubs did it.
Yeah, where's the buses?
You had much better transport that was provided by clubs, that was not necessarily funded by them, but I think a lot of it was, but. To be able to get coaches on for a lot of fans to travel down together at sort of reduced rates and stuff like that. And yeah, you're going to run into problems because roadworks or accidents and things like that. But for me, it's when you have an issue, as there was. I mean, we can talk until we're blue in the face again about the poor state of the rail network or whatever. But this isn't what this podcast is about. But it's the ticketing at the end of the day. It's the ability to be able to see these problems in advance and go, what can we do to alleviate this problem, so that fans aren't forced to then effectively try and get to Carlisle to travel down the West Coast line, or to try and get to Sheffield or somewhere to travel down to the centre of the country, and it just becomes an absolute nightmare. So yeah, that the ticketing issue is the biggest beef that I would have, and just around, look, you need better support, better liaison with the club as a fan base to get better in terms of how you cope with problems like this in the future.
How you deal with it. George is saying from Newcastle to London back home, non-stop clipper, here it comes. Remember that. Maybe we could have war buses, George, or we could have ever more tours. Maybe me and Mark can get a couple of buses and drive everybody down for the crack. Who knows? There's got to be something better. I think Ronald's saying as well, he remembers the clipper down to London again. Yeah, these things have all just been pied, haven't they? Do you know what I mean? And you think about how many fans that want to travel down to the capital, and it would be a proper experience with no people get the beers in and be on the bus and all the way down and stuff. And you can imagine it'd be like 40 blokes having a piss on the A1 up a hill or something like that, and then lay by. You could just see it happening.
Do you know what it is? I remember seeing that so many times as a kid. You travel on it, and you would see the buses pulled up, and there would be 30 or 40 lads that had all jumped off, all in a lay-by, standing against the bank having a bit, and you drive past, think, geez, that's going to be absolutely minging up there. But it happened a lot, and those buses were great into. I mean, there would have been an absolute state, I can imagine, once the beers had started flowing, and I think that's probably a reason why it doesn't happen.
Just laminate the whole bastard, so you can just wipe it down when you're finished. No need to go in there with a black light.
Have the drainage system down the sides and stuff like that, so it all just flows back out of the bus. But yeah, it's
exactly. It's a valid point. Just one last bit on this. We seem to be eager to fly fans over from Saudi and America and stuff like that. Why can't we put some more transport links on for the fans here going to away games? It's just a question, isn't it? I think it's something that the club will definitely have to engage in, I think, in conversation, because the trust are asking the question, they're going to ask a question, Adam's been in the comments there saying what a nightmare it was. A lot of fans have got voices and platforms to talk about it. So I think the club will have to look at it, mate.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think NUFC as well. We're saying that, with the ticketing issue as well. So every sort of group was chiming in at the weekend to say stuff like that. Look, if you want us to get the buses started, we'll if we get a crowdfunding started, and we can do.
Not with the way I park, mate. Fuck me. Everyone would be like, get a bit closer, Chris. Fucking hell. And the Mighty Win said it's crazy that the club doesn't charter flights to European matches. Do you know what, Win? You're right. And especially with the prestige and everything else and the tie-ins that they have commercially, it's got to be something that needs to be looked at. If we're going to qualify for Europe every single season, hopefully, then we'll get sorted. I'm laughing at Simon's comment there. We'll stop taking the piss. But you're here all week, mate. We will move on. We will move on, Simon. But I suppose moving on to something else, which is maybe a bit of a tricky topic. Really, we talked about keepers the other day. We were talking about the links to David De Gea. They were coming out. People were maybe saying it was maybe not the right move. Why has he not had a club for 6 months? I kind of understand the concern, everything there. I was of a mindset, if you can get a player like that with that experience, 6 months deal, why not? It fattens out the experience of the goalkeepers. I wasn't sure about Dubravka. I wasn't sure about Karius. Apart from being really, really good looking, as Zoolander would say, I wasn't sure what he could do as a goalkeeper. But Dubravka's coming for 2 games. Yes, he hasn't played for a long time. Looks shaky, Mark. As the goalkeeper of the two of us, Sunday, that 3rd goal in particular, you text me straight away and thought, what the fuck is he doing?
Where was he going?
Where was he going, man?
There's an argument to say that he's not played an awful lot of football, so that's why he makes that sort of half movement to come out. He should know better. He's an international goalkeeper. He's played enough football to know that that's not his ball, and it's those mistakes. But and then you go back and think, those are the kinds of mistakes that he was always making, and he's made those for Newcastle. He's made those for Slovakia. He made those previously for when he was playing for his previous clubs. Those are the kinds of mistakes that Martin Dubravka makes, and again with a penalty, that can. And I said at the weekend that can happen to everybody, every goalkeeper. We've seen that. The best goalkeeper in the world can get done like that, but
yeah.
It's that first one. The one for the 3rd goal is just that's
that hesitancy.
A lot of that is on him.
Yeah,
He's given Richarlison every opportunity to score, and he's not helped by the defending at the weekend, because I think
which is what Mighty Win's saying that as well.
Yeah,
I think Lascelles was shouting the 3rd goal. No, he was nowhere to be seen. I think he was limping half the time when the ball came over for the 3rd goal. But between the pair of them, it was dreadful, though, wasn't
it? It was, and the worry is with that now that's 7-2, and he's cracking, and then there was I think I saw a comment from somebody earlier on that had suggested that Karius's partner or wife had said she's hoping that he can get a move back to Italy in January. So
I would be sad to see her go, I must admit, to be fair, but I don't really give a fuck about.
Is she playing goal as well, does she?
She could just be in the squad for what was her name again, for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about. Most of the viewers will know what I'm talking about. She is not a bad looking lady, is old Karius, as you would expect, because he's a handsome bastard himself anyway. But sorry, so you're saying that he's maybe looking to get a move then, so he knows he's not part of the picture?
I mean, that is just, I don't know how much truth there is in that, but it was a comment that I'd sort of seen earlier on where it was his girlfriend or partner, wife, or
could that tell you that behind the scenes conversations have been had with the keeper?
Possibly. I think 4 months without Nick Pope is huge, and even then as well, Nick Pope, I think there's an upgrade route there. As good as Nick Pope has been, there's an upgrade route there. He's frustratingly, he was just starting to look like the best version of Nick Pope again when he gets injured. So 4 months, I mean, minimum beginning of March maybe that he's back for, if not later, and there's a shitload of football that needs to be played before then, and I just think that's a desperate need now is for a top level goalkeeper to come in, and by all accounts that Dubravka's also nursing a shoulder injury, which has been reported by various places, including our own Dan Wales, who put it out earlier on social media, and they're covering that on their local TV this week. And if he's struggling and may not see out January, then a goalkeeper has to be right at the top of the list now.
I think it will. I think it will be anyway. I think a keeper's definitely on the list now. I think Dubravka's shown, unfortunately, people got to remember that we signed Pope for a reason, because we needed an upgrade on Dubravka. That's why we signed Nick Pope, and Nick Pope proved to be a really good upgrade on Dubravka. I think some of the guys have put in the comment there about, his move to Man U and stuff like that, and he shouldn't have been kept on after that. It was a bit of a weird one from coming back, to be fair. I remember that stupid hotel picture he did about watching Man U and stuff, and all the Newcastle fans gave him shit in the comments, I think, and everything else. But it was weird to see him come back, but he did come back. Obviously, that was mainly because Man U couldn't sign him, really. But I think you're right. Having Pope out for 4 months, I mean, I do think as good as Nick Pope has been, I think the kind of roadmap of this club at some point is to upgrade on Nick Pope. At some point is to upgrade on him, and that could be accelerated if a right player comes along that they can sign for the long term. They might go ahead and do it. But this is why I think the De Gea deal makes sense to me, because they might not want to upgrade on Pope too soon, and they might want to see how he gets on with this shoulder injury when he comes back. And I can smell a deal being done for De Gea where he's here for 6 months. If he performs and plays well, they might keep him around. But if he does all right, and then they think, well, Nick Pope's come back, I don't need him. I could see him fucking off to Saudi in the summer, to one of the Saudi Arabian PIF clubs. So for me, I think it makes perfect sense almost to have the De Gea deal done. And I actually do think that deal is going to happen. I can see that happening maybe just as much as the Calvin Phillips deal, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I know people have questioned why he hasn't moved anywhere, and I think wages is probably a big thing in kind of what he's given.
I think so.
I think that's huge. I don't think he wanted a Saudi move. Otherwise, he would have gone. I mean, they would have snapped him up in a heartbeat. And they would have paid him what he wanted, effectively. And I think he still feels he's got enough to give at the top level of European football to want to stick around and give back himself to say, look, 6 months, somebody's going to need a goalkeeper. I'll go and play in the Champions League. I'll go and play at top level of La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, or Premier League. So, and this very well could be his way back into the top level of European football. So, and I think it's a deal that suits. I guess the issue will be wages, because he's going to command, or he'll want, top level, and that might rule Newcastle out. He was on supposedly £300,000 a week at Manchester United. He's not going to get that at Newcastle. And if I think somebody had mentioned that has Bruno got a top earner clause or something like that? If he has,
Shearer used to have that, didn't he?
Yeah,
Shearer used to have that. Yeah.
You're not going to bring somebody in on £300,000 and then all of a sudden you're going to have to pay one of your players a shit ton more money. That's not going to happen, and that might not be true. But I don't think he's going to get anywhere near that. But I think he gets an option of 6 months with the potential to move on if Newcastle maintain their Champions League status and he plays well. He gets an extended contract beyond that, and he gets better terms. That probably works for him more. I think he's the more obvious one in terms of goalkeepers. I can't see a move for the likes of Ramsdale happen. Not in January.
That's too money to drop in January, I think. Yeah, they'll save that for a striker, I think, or a midfielder.
Yeah, and more than that, I just can't see Arteta sanctioning a deal like that for potential top 4 rival for one of their goalkeepers. I just can't see that happening. So yeah, it's I think De Gea is a good choice. I'd question it. I think he's had his wrecks, he's had his moments, but he's certainly a better option than anything that's there at the moment. He's definitely a better goalkeeper than Dubravka. He's a better goalkeeper than Karius and poor Gillespie. He'll never get to look in at this.
Just definitely cracking me.
He's pretty much the water boy at this point, isn't he? I think we've said that before. But he's I think De Gea is probably the obvious choice if the wages are right, and they have to be.
that is interesting, almost as interesting as what's going on in the chat, where people are talking about the fact that Winnie the Pooh was a female, which blew my mind a bit. It's very distracting to talk about football where you guys are having this debate. Marcus now, his eyes are popping out of his head, almost Looney Tunes style, because he's rubbish at reading the comments. He gets lost in what he's saying. But yeah, there's been a big debate here about cartoon characters. And I think somebody asked, George asked, what is Roadrunner? And I just said, fast as fuck, really, is what. Do a job on the right wing, the Roadrunner, to be fair. Beep, beep, and just move down the old right wing. I wouldn't fancy poking a pig in a post-match interview, though. It would take fucking ages to get out what he was thought about the game. But great crack as always in the chat, guys. Keep it coming. We love that. The Mighty Win is saying he thinks Saudi loans are looming. Oh, Mahrez, that's one win. That is one. Mahrez. People forget about Mahrez being over there. Could you imagine just getting Mahrez on loan and then Miggy's on the bench? Miggy, have a sit. Mahrez is here. Mahrez comes in, tucks inside, and fucking bends one in the top corner. Just, oh man.
Can we all just sit back and admire the look on Mikel Arteta's face and then Jurgen's Klopp face as N'Golo Kante, Karim Benzema, we had Mahrez roll into Newcastle in the January and just go, all right, lads, let's get on with it. No, I mean, their faces will be an absolute sight. That is worth their wages alone.
It is almost as funny as George said, who framed Roger Rabbit? Sandro Tonali's agent. Superb, George. Right, we're moving on. We'll be here all night. So speaking of Sandro Tonali, segue, George. Well played. You set it up, mate. We'll tap it in. Milan is looming. We're not going to do a proper preview. We'll just have a quick crack about Milan now. Massive game, Mark. Just before you answer the question, as I said, there are a couple of players going to probably come back into the squad. I think we'll see some big names on that bench. I really do. I think we'll see some changes possibly to the starting lineup. But here's the question. So, do Newcastle really? It's a tricky one. So, if Newcastle win this game and stay in the Champions League, does it hurt their chances of finishing in fourth place in the Premier League as it would be if they went out completely and had no European football? That is the $65 million question, isn't it? Because this squad at the minute can't really take what is going on with the level of football that it's playing.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Captain Kane, man. He was a bella, wasn't he? He was a bella. Why all the women fancied him as well? I don't get it. So there's a question. So if Newcastle do lose completely and go out of Europe, is that a blessing in disguise? Or should we be wanting to stay in Europe for the financial benefit? Yes, we've got maybe the Saudi loans that can fatten the squad up as well, come in the Champions League, all that kind of stuff. What do you think, man?
It's a tough one because the status of the club, I think if they go out now and they're still struggling to get into the Champions League for next season, does that cause issues with a number of the players at the club? The one that immediately springs to mind is, does Bruno move on in the summer?
Botman,
Botman, I think you've got a little bit more time with. I think he's not been there very long, or certainly not as long. He is coming back from quite a layoff, and I think it would take an almighty sum to get him out of the club. Bruno has that release clause where somebody may or will trigger it. And if that comes where Newcastle aren't in the Champions League, that's it's a difficult one. And I can kind of see the benefit of Newcastle just not throwing Wednesday night, because you never want to kind of walk away from a game like that. But if they do lose or they do go out, it's not a bad thing. But I think the lack of European football hurts the club in terms of financial, in terms of
attracting players as well. All that kind of stuff.
It does open the better prospect of being able to put in a run in for the last half of the season to be able to get themselves back into the top 4, top 5. I just think you want Champions League football, and there's a bit of a break, isn't there? So you go from this game up until February time. So there is a good chunk of time off in terms of that, and it then gives you the ability to go and bring players in to come and bolster that squad for the Champions League, and obviously ones that are outside of the competition as well, because you're not going to bring anybody in that you really don't want to bring anybody in that's cup tied. and can't play it in Europe. I think you'd want to avoid going into the Europa League, but that's not the worst situation. I think it still gives you good European football against some good European teams to bring in some more money, to bring in some more advertising.
I think we could win that. I think we could win that if we went into that. I generally do think we could win that.
Yeah, I mean, Europa League, yeah, Liverpool, Brighton going to be tough. Villa in the Europa Conference League, so you're not going to meet them. But there are some good teams in that in the Europa League this season, and that would be tough to win. But I think you get some really good European nights out of that. I think that's what the club needs. I don't think they want that to stop, and you want progress. For me, if I'm looking at it going, yeah, I'd want the win. I'd want to get through to the next round. I want the knockout stage. I wanted to be able to further Newcastle's ambitions, further their name in Europe again. It's been too long without it for them.
Yeah. And it's the worldwide reach of being in that competition, isn't it? It's like you say, it's the players looking at that, war flags and the crowd and going, wow, look at that. I want a piece of them European nights. Say to your agent, if Newcastle spark an interest, let me know. I'm interested in talking to them, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I don't think the club will do anything other than try and win the game. I don't think Eddie Howe will set them up in any other way. I do think Dortmund have got a good chance of beating PSG. I think Dortmund have been great in the Champions League. I think they've got a really good chance of beating PSG. So I think Newcastle just got to get their job done, and then that's all they can concentrate on, and then see what happens off the back of that. But as I say, we will be doing a match preview, which we'll try and get out for you guys with our team. I think there'll be some changes. I think Mark agrees there will be some changes, I think, as well. And we'll get that. So we've got Adam back in the comments saying that Newcastle want to stay in the Champions League. End the story. I don't disagree, Adam. I think you're right, mate. I think financially and prestige, I do think it's the best competition in club football in the world, isn't it? To stay in, really, that's what we want to be in. And I think my only worry is the impact of the Premier League. Can we get into it next season? It's going to be a tough ask, I think. The way that the top four is shaping up. Villa have been brilliant, but I do think Villa have got a wobble in them. I think that a couple of injuries could take them down a little bit in that charge. Villa very much looked like us last season, and we were very lucky with injuries. So if Villa had the same season, they might be really strong and stay in there. Obviously, Liverpool have re-cemented their place, I think, in that top four this season. They're back at it. They've addressed the issues in the squad with thanks to Saudi Arabian money. You're welcome, Jurgen. You whingy bastard. But they've sorted their problems out and they look a lot better for it now. So it's really I think that one space up for grabs, Mark, isn't it, between Villa, Spurs, Man United, and Newcastle? I think is the main teams I think that'll go for that. Brighton maybe an outside push. So Newcastle are going to have to get these injured players back and get their head screwed on in the league, aren't they? Because they can't keep losing games like we lost this week if we want to be top four again next season.
No, and getting back to it, I just think, you want the progression to kind of final bit on the Champions League bit. But I think, you definitely you want progression. You want that to happen. Nobody wants to go out. It's not the end of the world if you do go out, but you don't want it to happen.
No. But
I think there's enough time between Wednesday and the next round to be able to bolster the squad in January with fresh players, to get players back who were injured, the likes of Barnes and Anderson, Byrne, Willock, Botman. There are plenty that will be due back before the Champions League kicks in again. So there's plenty of time to do that. And if you can add 3 or 4 others through loans or other sort of transfers in January, suddenly the picture becomes a lot rosier, and we forget about what's kind of gone on, and you can move on. But yeah, there's going to be an almighty scrap at the top of the Premier League this season, because you're right. I mean, Villa have been flying. Arsenal and Liverpool, obviously the top two at the moment. City have had their wobble for this season with three draws and a defeat. And they didn't look particularly brilliant against Luton. I thought Luton did pretty well against them, but they did enough to win. They're blessed with the fact that they had Roger back. I think he's excellent, but they usually get to Christmas and then kick up a gear as well. They might be able to move on the likes of Calvin Phillips and then bring in somebody else if they absolutely need to. And you're right in terms of Spurs getting back to form. If somehow Manchester United decide to be Manchester United of old rather than the last 10 years worth of Manchester United, which is absolutely dreadful, that there are other teams in and around that fight that it's going to be difficult. And I think we're still in that thing as well. If Man United go out of Europe completely, Premier League lose 5th place for the Champions League.
If we both go out, if Man United and Newcastle both go out, I think the Premier League loses that 5th place. But if one of them stays in, I think we still get the 5th place. So I think the commentator said that the other night. I think when we were watching one of the games on the TNT, I think it was. I think it was watching Man United implode. I think it was, which was hilarious. Yeah, for me, I think, I'd love to see us get through. I couldn't give two fucks about Man United, to be fair, but I'd love to see us get through. Comment there from Alan. Mark, you're probably the best person to answer that. How do you pay for Super Chat? PayPal?
Super Chat, I know you can hit the $sign underneath if you're on the piece, or if you're on PC version. I'm not sure about the app. Do you know? I've never actually done it, so I don't know. I don't know if you can do it through PayPal. I know you can.
You might be able to, Alan. Yeah, you might be able to, mate. Absolutely.
If you
just
give it a whirl. Underneath, if you wanted to do that, hit the $sign underneath the chat, then you should be able to do that. So yeah, thank you.
Top man on, yeah. Andrew's saying the quadruple is still on. What we've been negative for. Well said, Andrew. Well said, mate. Absolutely brilliant. So listen, we'll move away from Milan because we will get our preview out for you guys to have a look at. So we're going to finish up with Out of Toon, as we always do. There's been a couple of things to talk about today. One big story in particular, which a lot of you did ask for one of my rants about. And I didn't rant because I was busy doing my day job. But you know exactly who I'm talking about. It's not quite Out of Toon. It's involving a former Newcastle United player. And that was this fella right here, Joey Barton. If anyone didn't see this. So Joey Barton has been piping off. And this is what he said. He said, women shouldn't be talking with any kind of authority in the men's game. Come on, let's be serious. It's a complete different game. If you don't accept that, we will always see things differently. The women's game is thriving, fantastic to see, which is nice of Joey to say, but I cannot take a thing they say seriously in the men's arena. What did he say? Namaste. So Joey got a lot of backlash off the back of this, just a little bit. And he did have some really interesting comments, I think, as well from female punters. But just to get my 2 pence in on this, Mark, but before I hand it over to you as well, I'm not going to rant really about Joey Barton because people probably need to tend to remember Joey Barton's legacy at Newcastle is a little bit clouded. I think there's two sides to Joey Barton's legacy at Newcastle. The good side that everyone tries to remember is the guy who helped us get promoted under Chrissy Houghton, played some good stuff, set up loads of goals for Andy Carroll, wound the Mackhams up, called Mike Ashley a prick, all this kind of stuff. And that was very nice things. But the other side of Joey Barton was a guy who isn't really fucking wired right, to be honest with you. This is a guy who stabbed a cigar out in somebody's eye. Is one of his own teammates, I think, battered somebody within an inch of their life. Was in prison at one point, was he not, when he was a Newcastle United player? Got sent off against Liverpool when Shearer needed him the most. He has the perplexity and the tendency to go a little bit off the rails, does Joey? He's actually a very intellectual guy when you hear him talk, but that doesn't mean that his opinion isn't completely archaic in the current modern era that we live in. And I don't really think it's Joey's fault, per se 100%. It's probably the way that he's been raised, the people he's been raised by, and the people who've probably influenced him in the game as well, because the game, rightly or wrongly, is probably still quite, misogynistic in terms of its viewpoint to the female game, no matter how much it's gone forward in the years to come. We look at the Newcastle United ladies team, prime example, how well they progressed under this new ownership. But as a father to two daughters, same as Mark, I just think that we have to be better than those who have come before us. We have to learn. We have to be open-minded. We have to be willing to embrace change. And, there's nothing wrong with females talking about football. Some of them do it excellently well. You look at the professionals, likes of Laura Woods, likes of Gabby Logan or Yorith, whatever she's called these days. I always get a name wrong, but they do a fantastic job. They're very well researched pundits. And I think Joey actually had to go at vloggers, what he called vloggers and YouTubers and things like that. And there's some really fantastic female YouTubers and vloggers. out there. I mean, I don't know if anyone's seen Alice Talks Football. She's brilliant. She does her Man United stuff, and she does her own individual stuff. She's articulate, she's clued up, she's got great tactical sense. You even look at your own Newcastle United, female podcasters. You got Charlotte, A True Faith, who does a fantastic job for them. We've had Kendall on the channel, Mark, where she knows her stuff as well. You can't attack, females for taking an interest in talking about the game. And I just think Joey's points have been a bit misdirected, and I think, he's not done himself any favors by keep pushing the issue, and then getting Piers Morgan to try and almost justify your claims. Probably wasn't the right idea, was it really, mate? In all fairness, but going over, that's my take on the Joey Barton thing. I just think if that's your opinion, Joey, fine, cool, but you don't need to tell the world that, mate. Just keep that under your hat. That's really my take on it, mate.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion of, if you don't like a commentator, that's fine. You're allowed. I said openly last week, the week before, can't stand Dion Dublin's commentary, especially when he's commentary like Dion Dublin.
Great selling houses now, then, mate. Great selling houses now, bro.
He loves some stairs, but I just think that, look, if you've taken the time to study enough, if you've taken and what got me is a sort of comment about not being. I've seen people say people not being qualified to talk about the game. Well, what constitutes qualifications to talk about the game? Because none of the commentators played the game really at a high level.
True. That's true.
And they, I mean,
some of the managers didn't. Wenger, Mourinho, Rafa, they didn't really play it.
I mean, some played the game to a certain level, but didn't go beyond that, and became brilliant managers. But if you take the time to study and you take the time to work at the craft, then you should be given the opportunity. Again, I saw one of the comments before about tokenism. I don't like people being put in places just for the sake of them being put in there. I think you should be the right person for the job.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
No matter who you are. But when you start to try and look down at the likes of an Alex Scott or Farrell Williams or Karen Carney at times, she does great on me at times, but I think it's because, she's had some howlers. But actually, when you listen to her, she does come out with some really good points, and some of the tactical stuff is that they are switched on. They've learned, they've watched, they've studied, they've taken the time to be able to put in the same as the commentary teams do, the same as some of them are far beyond some of the pundits. The male pundits, and some of the male pundits are absolutely awful. I mean, how many times do we have a go at some of the pundits on here? Christ almighty, some of them are absolutely dreadful.
Let's call a spade here. Michael Owen was saying he remembered the fucking Leeds goalkeeper from the youth academy where they signed him from fucking France. Didn't Rio Ferdinand talk about a player PSG we're going to bring on the sold to fucking Saudi Arabia 4 months beforehand or something like that? So, Paul Merson does no research whatsoever. Ever. So, you can't sit there and say that the male pundits are in this, this kind of platform of superiousness. I kind of understand what you're saying about maybe some of the pundits. You do look at some of them, you do question, all there just to tick a box kind of a thing. But it's one of them things where people do want a little bit of exclusivity. Inclusivity, sorry, and diversity on the TV. People do like to see that. They do like to see the game is changing. The game isn't what the game was 25, 30 years ago, but Joey's talking about it like it is. You're right, Ruben. He is entitled to his opinion, and I said that. I'm not going to slag him. I'm not going to jump on and rant about him. He is entitled to his opinion, but I do think his opinion is a little bit set in the old-fashioned mentality, and I just think he maybe needs to open his mind a little bit. Has he spent any time around these people? Does he listen? Does he listen to what they've got to say? He's saying he turns off, when they talk, so he's not listening to what Mark said there. Some of the tactical observations and discussions are really good. If you listen to the Stick to Football podcast, is Jill Scott on there gives just as good as she can get with the likes of Roy Keane and Neville and Carragher, and that's big company to be around, isn't it? They're some of the best pundits in the game, and she gives as good as she gets. So I just think that Joey maybe he's entitled to his opinion, But I think he maybe could have verbalized that a little bit better. I think he's maybe that's where the screws loose a bit. I think the wires loose in Joey's heat. I think.
Possibly. I think it's just the doubling down on stuff. But yeah, look, he's entitled to his opinion. I don't agree with it at times. And I think as George has put in, some of the pundits are equally a shite. So it doesn't matter who you are; you can be dreadful either way. But some of them deserve their opportunity to be there. Some deserve and have put in the work, and that's it. It's just like I said, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're good enough, you should be able to do the job, regardless of race, color, sex, whatever. That's it. If you're good enough to do the job, you should be able to do the job, no matter who you are.
100%. Yeah. For me, if I think a pundit's shite, I don't care if they're male or female or non-binary. If I think they're a shite pundit, I'd say they're a shite pundit. But I wouldn't actively go after them because of their gender and make that a thing. But that's that's obviously each to their own, in terms of that from Joey Barton. But yeah, it wasn't great. I don't think it was very well thought. But anyway, on to something that was great.
On a brighter note.
On a brighter note, to Girona in Spain. My word, they are having an absolute belter of a season. They beat Barcelona for the first time ever, and they became the first team in Europe in the top 5 European leagues to get over 40 points. These guys could win the La Liga title, right? And credit to football trolls for this tweet, which was absolutely incredible. Let's see who you really are, as they pulled away the Girona mask to reveal the Leicester team of 2015-16, who was sensational and won the league. Mate, how good are these guys playing, Mark? Honestly, what a great story this is.
It's fun, isn't it? It's one of those where you sit and look at it and just go, really, really enjoying the fact that it's not just the usual suspects at the top of the league. And is it a point clear of Real at the moment? I did put the league table in there. Yeah. I think there we go. So
there you go.
They're 2 points clear of Real.
That's sensational, man.
They've only lost one game this season. They're the top scorers in the league. Yes, they've conceded a few, but look, I mean, they're a product of the. I think they're now a product of the City group, aren't they, of Sheikh Mansour and stuff.
As Wynn says, they've got 2 brilliant loanees, and that's where the low market works well, doesn't it? Which the Premier League were talking about trying to shut down, weren't they?
They do. They've got a couple on loan from Barca, I think, as well. And look, it's just nice to see another. I mean, La Liga has been too much of kind of 2/3 teams for too long, and it's just nice to see somebody breaking up that party a little bit for now, and that I think it's the fun, of it. And you're absolutely right with football trolls with the Leicester comparison.
Brilliant.
I just think it's nice to see a smaller team come in and be able to play some good football and be able to do things and disrupt the top teams in the league and really be able to kind of put a push. And I really, really hope it continues, because it is such a feel-good sort of story for a team like that to be riding high like they are.
No, absolutely. It's a long way to continue. We love to see that kind of a thing, because you don't want to see any team, any league bottomed out by 1 or 2 clubs. I'd hate it if it happened to the Premier League. It's the SPL's had it for years. You're right. La Liga's been 2 teams or 3 teams, for 25, 30 years now. I think the last time I saw a team do this in La Liga, it was probably Valencia under Benitez, I think, wasn't it? That broke that mold of the kind of 2 or 3 teams in La Liga. So long may this continue. So I'm buzzing for it. And I hope it continues to go. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on Girona's results for the rest of the season. But speaking of a former Barcelona player, I think David Beckham is literally trying to replicate Barcelona of old into Miami, because this was something that popped up as we saw earlier on, that Luis Suarez, apparently it looks like Luis Suarez is the deal to Inter Miami is pretty much on the cards from what all the noise is being there. He's been playing over at is it Gremio? Is it how do you pronounce that? Is it Gremio? Gremio over in Brazil. I think he's still banging in goals, to be fair to Luis Suarez. But they're talking about him going to join Messi and Busquets And is Jordi Alba there as well? I think he is, isn't he, over in Miami? I'm pretty sure he is, isn't he? There's about 4 of them there, isn't there?
It potentially is, yeah. Look, it's they're going to be fun. I mean, it's like the what was the old sort of 5-a-side football called? Yeah, exactly.
You bite marks. Yeah. He's chomping at the bit, George, to join into Miami, I think, isn't he, mate?
What was the sort of the old stages football that they used to show on Sky all the time? The 5-a-side.
The Masters football, the Masters. I used to love that. Remember Gaza played in that? He was fucking class.
It's almost a version of that, but I mean, look, it's just a fun kind of story as well, isn't it? To kind of get the old band back together. If they can bring in Neymar next to one or two of the other ones. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Antagonizers loving the old school talk. Thank you, mate. It takes me back to Beardsley scoring a blinder against Spurs. It cheered me up. I try to take me away from the horrible Spurs memories, but yeah, I must admit that would be superb. I mean, there was this fake ghost game, wasn't there, between Inter Miami and was it Al Nassr? And apparently it's not happening. But I kind of would love to see it happening, just to see like the old Barcelona Masters team against Ronaldo and Mane and Laporte and people like that, because that would be unbelievable, that game. I think I'd watch that 100%. That'd be fucking class. But I mean, Luis Suarez, even at the age he is now, he would smash in goals in that league. Remember Robbie Keane went over to LA Galaxy and he was fucking phenomenal, wasn't he? He's got 120 odd goals or something. I definitely think Suarez would still score goals over in the MLS, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Most definitely. And let's not also forget that DeAndre Yedlin's still playing for Inter Miami as well.
Mate, he must be living the dream, DeAndre Yedlin. He must be living the dream.
What a story that is.
Mate, it's brilliant. But I saw Beckham get interviewed about Roy Hodgson as captain. Great show. Actually, just on Roy Hodgson, I don't know if you did see the interview about this. Palace got totally screwed at the weekend. Yep. Ridiculous decision again. Shithouse refereeing. We saw it with the Romero tackle, which was fucking disgraceful. The Luton
we haven't even touched on that tonight. That was an awful challenge.
We didn't post match, but Romero was fucking disgraceful. That was a straight red. The Luton player was a straight red, and then Palace get their player sent off for fucking nothing really. And Roy Hodgson sadly turned around and said that he's not going to miss the game when he eventually hangs it up. And they said why, and he said because of referee. And that was really sad, that wasn't it, to hear a manager of that experience, just cutting through all the shit just so honestly, wasn't he, saying that, just that was sad.
Yeah, I mean, look at the length of time that Roy's had in the game, and the teams that he's managed international level as well, and
he managed Jesus at schoolboy level, didn't he, mate? He's been in the fucking game that long.
It is a sad indictment of the game at the moment that a manager who's had that long in the game is sort of happy to be done with it at the end and not really care about what happens afterwards. And that should tell the league exactly what they need to know about what's going on at the moment and what they've got to do to improve. I mean, we haven't already shouted it from the rooftops over recent weeks. But yeah, definitely that's a sad indictment of it.
It really is. But yeah, what a shame. But yeah, Luis Suarez to Miami would certainly be something to keep an eye on, mate. But that's us pretty much done for this week then, guys. Thank you so much to everybody who's tuned in. As always, it really helps the episode flow. And to all you mags who have only just got back home today from London, you are bloody troopers, you lot. Adam Pearson and the lot is in the comments. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate that. As we mentioned at the start, if you do like what you see, smash and subscribe. Come and join us. We're over 6K subs, so we are still a baby, but we are very much having a grand old time of it. Thanks to you lovely people. It's all free content. We've got loads of stuff you get stuck into. The show you've just watched, transfer room videos, which are going to ramp up, Mark, daft crazy, aren't they, in the lead up to January transfer window. We've got the match previews. We'll do a preview for Milan. We'll be back with a post-match analysis after the Milan game as well. So keep it ever more, guys. It's all free, but if you want to be a member and give a little back to the channel, there is an option down there. Smash whichever button suits you best. Have a cracking day, guys. Cracking evening even. It's late at night, isn't it? Well, it might be day wherever you are. You might be in America. So there you go, Mark. I've saved myself there as well. But as George rightly says, aware the lads and lasses. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you the next Evermore. See you later.
See you guys.